This was supposed to be a dream come true, a young Indian woman swept off her feet by a wealthy Dubai sheikh, a lavish wedding, a promise of forever. And just weeks later, she's found dead. No warning, no explanation, just a body, cold and lifeless in a foreign country. The story made headlines across India and the UAE, but what wasn't reported is far more disturbing. CCTV footage mysteriously missing. A death certificate rushed without autopsy, and behind it all, whispers of abuse, manipulation, and a terrifying power imbalance. Was it suicide, a tragic accident, or was she silenced for knowing too much? This case has everything: international money, influence, and a grieving family begging for justice with no one listening. The more you look into it, the more disturbing it becomes. Stay with me, because what you're about to hear isn't just another tragic love story. It's a cover-up hiding in plain sight. At 22, Priya Sharma was living what many could only dream of, married to one of the wealthiest and most influential men in the Middle East, Sheikh Amir Al Maktoum, a 41-year-old billionaire with connections that stretched far beyond Dubai's glittering skyline. Their wedding had all the trappings of a fairy tale: luxurious venues, elaborate celebrations, and an opulent lifestyle that others could only envy. But what should have been the beginning of a life filled with privilege and luxury took a deadly turn just weeks after the vows were exchanged. Priya, once the glowing bride, was found dead in a private villa in Dubai under suspicious circumstances. Initial reports called it a suicide, an unthinkable tragedy in an already perfect world. But as more questions arose, the pieces of the puzzle just didn't fit. CCTV footage from the night of Priya's death was mysteriously wiped. The palace was locked down, and officials pushed forward with a hasty death certificate, dismissing the need for a thorough investigation. Why such secrecy? And why were the family's demands for a proper autopsy ignored? This case captured the attention of not only India and the UAE, but the world. It raised more questions than answers, leaving millions of people wondering what really happened to Priya Sharma. Was it truly a suicide? Or was her tragic fate a dark secret buried by those in power? The truth remains elusive, but this much is clear: someone or something wanted to keep it hidden. Priya Sharma was just a 22-year-old girl. From Mumbai, when the unimaginable happened, she met Sheikh Amir Al Maktoum. Raised in a modest middle-class household, Priya's life was transformed the moment she caught the eye of one of Dubai's most eligible bachelors. The sheikh, at 41, was a powerful and enigmatic figure, with a wealth that could buy countries, and a reputation that spanned continents. To her family and to the world, it seemed like a dream come true. Their story quickly became a global sensation. The media followed every step of their courtship, from the lavish events to the exclusive gatherings. Priya, once an unknown young woman from Mumbai, was now the center of attention, showered with gifts, attention, and a life beyond her wildest dreams. Her wedding to the sheikh was a spectacle, a marriage that made headlines around the world. Crowds gathered, socialites and royalty mingled, and for a brief moment it was impossible to imagine a more perfect union. But behind the glitz and glamour, there were whispers, subtle, hushed concerns. Priya's family, though ecstatic at her newfound status, couldn't shake off an uneasy feeling. Was this truly love, or was it something more complex? Priya's life, from the moment she entered the sheikh's world, was no longer hers to control. She was bound by the rules of a royal family that had been navigating power dynamics and societal expectations for generations. Her parents were proud, but also worried. Priya's beauty and intelligence were unquestionable, but the life she was stepping into was unlike anything anyone in her family had ever known. The pressures of being married to a man with such immense power and wealth were overwhelming. Priya, once the carefree girl from Mumbai, now had to carry the weight of an entire kingdom's expectations. Questions swirled around their relationship. Was Priya truly in love with Sheikh Amir, or had she been swept up by the allure of luxury and status? And more troubling still, was there a darker force at play, something that forced her into this? Marriage for reasons other than romance? As Priya was thrust into this world of wealth, luxury and power, it became clear that the fairy tale was only the beginning. Beneath the surface of this fairy tale marriage lay questions about her agency, her choices, and the price she would ultimately pay for it all. After the fairy tale wedding, Priya Sharma's life seemed perfect on the outside, but behind the walls of the opulent palace, her reality was far from it. What appeared to be a life of luxury, lavish clothes, fine dining, and endless travel came with a price. The glamorous exterior hid a life of isolation, emotional turmoil, and growing fear. In the palace, Priya quickly realized that she was no longer the independent young woman from Mumbai. She was now Sheikh Amir's wife, a public figure and a symbol of his status. The constant media attention was stifling, but it was the restrictions placed on her personal life that really began to take a toll. She was cut off from her family, with only sporadic visits or communication. Her access to the outside world was tightly controlled, with surveillance systems monitoring her every move. The once vibrant, adventurous Priya now lived in a gilded cage, surrounded by the finest things, but with a deep sense of emptiness growing within her. As time passed, the palace became a prison, and Priya felt trapped. The control exerted by her husband, combined with the cultural expectations of the royal family, weighed heavily on her. Her life, once filled with dreams and aspirations, was now dictated by rigid rules, societal obligations, and the crushing reality of living under constant scrutiny. There were no quiet moments, no escapes from the palace's walls. Even the staff, who she had once grown close to, were now under surveillance. Every interaction was watched, and her privacy was a distant memory. But amidst this carefully constructed facade, Priya found a lifeline. She began secretly texting her closest friend back in Mumbai. These texts, seemingly innocent at first, soon revealed a much darker side to her marriage. Priya spoke of feeling trapped, suffocated, and alone. She confided in her friend about the emotional abuse she had begun to endure, subtle but crushing remarks that chipped away at her self-esteem. Priya's once confident voice began to crack under the pressure of her new life. She expressed regret, confusion, and a growing sense of dread about what her future might hold. In one particularly telling message, Priya wrote, "I don't know how much longer I can take this. It's all just a show." She hinted that there were things going on behind closed doors that she couldn't yet bring herself to speak of openly. The deeper the texts went, the more it became clear her marriage was not what the world saw on the outside. There were secrets lurking in the shadows, and Priya was beginning to feel the weight of them. Her life, once full of possibility, was now a series of empty rooms, distant smiles, and a marriage that seemed to drain her of everything that made her Priya Sharma, the girl from Mumbai with big dreams. It was only a matter of time before something would give, but would anyone listen before it was too late? Priya's sudden disappearance in the weeks following her last text sent shockwaves through her family and the media. For days, her loved ones had heard nothing from her. Her usual messages, which once flowed freely between Mumbai and Dubai, abruptly stopped. At first, her family thought it was just another episode of the palace's tight grip on her communication, but as the days wore on, panic set in. Priya's family in Mumbai began frantically calling her, but there was no response. They reached out to her friends, her colleagues, and anyone who could have had any information about her whereabouts. It was as if she had simply vanished into thin air. Desperate, they contacted the Indian embassy in Dubai, but the response was far slower than anyone expected. Days passed without any meaningful updates, and the silence only deepened the fear that something was terribly wrong. Meanwhile, Sheikh Amir's side of the story remained disturbingly quiet. The palace issued no statements, no updates on Priya's whereabouts, and no indication of where she was or what had happened. The sheikh, known for his public presence and wealth, remained silent, a silence that spoke volumes in the face of mounting concern. Then, after days of relentless searching and unanswered questions, the unthinkable happened. A body was found. It was Priya's. The discovery sent shockwaves through the community, but the cause of death was far from clear. Authorities in Dubai, as well as officials from India, began their investigation. However, the official statement was troublingly vague. The cause of death was listed as under investigation, and the details surrounding her final moments remained clouded in uncertainty. How could someone so full of life just disappear, only to be found lifeless without any clear explanation? What had happened to Priya? Despite the official investigation, there was no statement from the sheikh about his wife's tragic death. No mourning public appearances, no funeral photos, nothing. The silence from the royal family was deafening, and it only added to the mystery surrounding her passing. Was it an accident, a tragic health issue, or something far darker? Priya's family, heartbroken and desperate for answers, felt the world slipping away as they struggled to understand what had happened. They were left without closure, without the comfort of knowing that their daughter's last moments were understood or acknowledged. The absence of a funeral, a memorial, or even a public statement from the sheikh left them and the world searching for answers in a case that was slipping deeper into darkness. As the days turned into weeks, questions piled up. Why was there no official response? Why was there no closure? Was this truly a tragic accident, or was there something more sinister at play? The silence surrounding Priya's death grew louder with each passing moment, leaving everyone to wonder what the sheikh was hiding. As Priya's case continued to unfold, the investigation became increasingly tangled in secrecy, dead ends, and disturbing revelations. The medical examiner's report, which was mysteriously leaked to the press, offered chilling insights that would haunt those looking for the truth. The report mentioned possible blunt force trauma as a cause of death. But there was more. It also referenced previous bruises on Priya's body, bruises that suggested a pattern of physical harm, not just one isolated incident. This raised a terrifying question. Had Priya been suffering in silence long before her tragic end? In addition to the medical findings, legal documents started to surface, adding even more layers to the mystery. Court documents revealed that Priya had been forced to sign a prenuptial agreement before her marriage to Sheikh Amir. On the surface, such agreements are common among the ultra-wealthy, but this one stood out for its peculiar terms. It wasn't just about protecting wealth. There was also a clause related to inheritance, a clause that seemed to hint at the sheikh's desire to maintain control over his fortune, no matter the cost. These revelations raised suspicions. Could the marriage have been more about power and control than love? Was Priya just another pawn in a game of wealth and status? Meanwhile, the media frenzy around Priya's death reached a boiling point. Journalists dug deep, and the pressure on the sheikh to speak up intensified. But instead of answers, a series of disturbing new reports emerged. Other women who had been involved with Sheikh Amir came forward, each one with a similar story of manipulation, control, and a lack of freedom in their relationships with him. These women, some of whom had lived under the sheikh's roof for years, described chilling tales of emotional and psychological abuse, offering a pattern of behavior that mirrored what was now suspected to have been Priya's life. The sheikh's charm, his wealth, and his influence had masked a darker side, one that was beginning to reveal itself. However, the most frustrating aspect of the investigation was the timeline inconsistencies and the lack of crucial evidence. For one, the CCTV footage from the palace, which could have been critical in understanding the events leading up to Priya's death, had been mysteriously erased. There were reports of blackouts in the security system, leaving hours of footage completely gone. This created an undeniable sense of suspicion. Why would such vital footage be deleted? Was it a cover-up? Or was there something or someone trying to erase the truth? As investigators dug deeper, the web of deceit surrounding the sheikh grew more complex. No stone was left unturned, yet answers remained scarce. Witnesses began to disappear or become increasingly unwilling to speak. Those who had been in the palace during the time Priya was last seen were either reluctant or completely silent when questioned. It seemed like the closer investigators got to the truth, the more obstacles they encountered. Despite the mounting pressure from both the media and Priya's family, the investigation remained at a standstill. The sheikh's power and influence seemed to stretch far beyond the confines of his palace. The investigation, at least on the surface, appeared to be running in circles, with no clear path to the answers everyone so desperately sought. But even with all the dead ends and delays, the whispers of a deeper, more disturbing truth were growing. Louder, the public's doubts were mounting. Could Priya's tragic death be the result of a violent act committed by someone far more powerful than they had ever imagined? Or was there something even darker hiding beneath the surface, something that had yet to be exposed? As the investigation into Priya's death dragged on, her family found themselves locked in a bitter legal struggle against one of the most powerful families in the world. Sheikh Amir's wealth, influence and access to top-tier legal counsel ensured that every move in the courtroom was meticulously orchestrated to protect his interests. For Priya's grieving family, seeking justice felt like an uphill battle. They were up against not just the sheikh, but the entire Dubai elite legal system, which seemed determined to shield him from accountability at every turn. Despite the overwhelming evidence of Priya's mistreatment, the legal process in Dubai was slow and at times seemed completely obstructed. Court hearings were delayed or rescheduled without explanation. The sheikh's defense attorneys used their vast resources to delay and confuse the proceedings. The wealthy elite in Dubai had their own way of making sure that power trumped justice, and Priya's family was beginning to feel the weight of their disadvantage. However, the world was watching, and Priya's case was starting to gain international attention. Protests erupted in India, where Priya was born and raised. Citizens took to the streets, demanding answers and raising their voices against the apparent injustice. Media panels across the globe began to scrutinize the situation, questioning the safety of inter-country marriages between wealthy foreigners and women from poorer nations. Was this a case of privilege and power being abused to silence the truth? The Indian government also began to take a more active stance, but there was only so much they could do while the legal battle was playing out on foreign soil. Influencers, activists, and diplomats started to speak out, joining the outcry and putting pressure on the international community to intervene. The topic of justice for Priya became a rallying cry for women's rights groups and organizations, fighting for fair legal representation in global relationships. Her case was no longer just about one young woman. It had become a symbol of the vulnerabilities faced by women in high-profile international marriages and the need for better protections. But as Priya's family continued to struggle for justice, an important question loomed. Is justice even possible when you're up against a billionaire with global reach? The weight of wealth and power was a heavy force that no one, no matter how righteous, seemed able to overcome. It was starting to feel as though the sheikh's influence was not confined to just his personal life. It had seeped into the very institutions that were supposed to protect the innocent and seek justice for the wronged. The courtroom may have been the stage for this battle, but the fight for truth and justice was unfolding on a much larger stage, one where power, wealth, and privilege had the upper hand. As the media circus around the case grew, so did the pressure on the Dubai legal system to deliver a verdict. But as Priya's family continued to fight, it became increasingly clear that they were up against forces far more powerful than they had ever anticipated. Could they ever hope to find justice in a system that seemed to favor the powerful above all else? As Priya's family scrambled for answers, their hearts broke, knowing that the final moments of her life were filled with fear and desperation. One of the last known conversations she had was with her cousin, who had been close to Priya throughout her life. The call was emotional and unsettling. Priya's voice, shaky and trembling, seemed to suggest that something was terribly wrong. She spoke of feeling trapped, isolated in her new life. "I don't know how much longer I can take this," she said, her words hauntingly echoing in the minds of those who heard them. Priya was alone, desperate for help, and it was clear she knew the danger was closing in. But what really happened in those final hours? Surveillance footage from the luxury hotel where Priya stayed in the days leading up to her death has become one of the key pieces of evidence in the case. However, the footage was either withheld or mysteriously destroyed, just when it seemed it might reveal the truth about what happened behind the palace walls. Without it, the investigation was left to rely on circumstantial evidence and incomplete witness accounts, many of which were conflicting. One of the most chilling aspects of the case is the disappearance of a witness from the palace who had been one of the last people to see Priya alive. This individual had agreed to provide crucial information to investigators, but just days after their testimony, they vanished without a trace. Was it a coincidence, or did someone with the power to silence witnesses make sure this person disappeared before they could reveal what they knew? These open questions have continued to haunt the case, creating a cloud of suspicion that refuses to dissipate. What were Priya's final moments like? What did she truly experience before her untimely death? The loss of the surveillance footage and the disappearance of a key witness have only deepened the mystery, leaving more questions than answers. The eerie feeling of something being covered up lingers in the air, and with each passing day, Priya's family grows more desperate to understand the full truth. For the people who knew her and loved her, Priya's tragic end remains a devastating and unresolved puzzle, one filled with emotional pain, unanswered questions, and the overwhelming fear that the real story may never come to light. These lingering mysteries are what continue to fuel the suspicions and drive the fight for justice in this case. But as long as these questions remain open, so too does the suspicion that something far more sinister is at play, something that those in power are determined to keep hidden. The world may have tried to forget Priya, but her family has fought tirelessly to ensure that her story is never erased. Since her death, they have waged a relentless battle to reopen the investigation, refusing to let her life and death become another forgotten tragedy. Their push to seek justice has been met with walls of bureaucracy and resistance from those with the power to silence them. Yet their persistence has sparked a wider conversation about the hidden dangers lurking in seemingly perfect unions and the risks women face when they step into unfamiliar cultural and social dynamics. Priya's story has gone beyond just her tragic end. It's inspired a growing movement for women's rights, especially around online safety and marriage verification. The overwhelming support from social media platforms, activists, and women's rights organizations has given a voice to those who have long been silenced by powerful figures. Priya's family has publicly pushed for laws to be enacted that would protect women in international marriages, ensuring that the kind of abuse and manipulation she endured never happens again. Her story has also led to emotional memorials, both online and in person, with people from around the world showing their respect and offering support to the family. In these moments, Priya's life is remembered not as the lost young woman who was taken too soon, but as a symbol of resilience in the face of oppression. The public mourning for Priya has underscored a broader reckoning. Was she a victim of a cultural clash, the game of power played by those who control international elites, or was there something even darker at work? As her family continues to seek the truth, Priya's tragic fate serves as a wake-up call to the world. The risks women face in such marriages are not just personal, but societal. And her legacy is one that demands a shift in how society views and treats vulnerable women, especially in a world where power, wealth, and influence are often used to silence the truth. Priya may no longer be here, but the fight she unknowingly began will continue. Her name forever intertwined with a movement that seeks justice for those who can no longer speak for themselves. This case isn't closed. The truth is still hiding behind silk curtains and golden gates. Priya's life may have ended in mystery, but her legacy is one of unanswered questions, injustice, and a call for change. Those who have the power to silence the truth have done so, but this isn't over. Not until every single detail comes to light and those responsible are held accountable. If stories like Priya's should never be forgotten, share this video. Keep her voice alive, because silence protects power, but noise can break it. The world can't afford to stay silent. Priya's story is just one of many. Speak up, share, and demand justice for the truth that's still buried.